Hello friends, welcome back. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am creating for Authentique Paper today, and I'm continuing my series I call the 4-Sheet Challenge. So every month I'm taking the 4 pages of the calendar collection that go with that month and creating a project. I'm using as much of that paper as I can, and so this month I chose the December pages because we're celebrating Christmas in July on my channel, and I thought that would work perfectly for this. And so I am visiting an old friend with this project, and that is the Paper Bag Mini Album. And I know that most of us have got our start with mini albums with a paper bag style. And so I thought we'd just go back to basics on that and create this fun and very quick to make, very sturdy book base and cover it with that gorgeous collection. To get this book base started, you're gonna need your paper bags, and this is the size that is a standard lunch bag. And I don't know why they call it standard, because they do seem to be different from store to store, and so I'm just gonna go with this one. I did wind up cutting off 1/4 of an inch because when I fold this over, I want it to be not more than 6 inches tall, and that is because I want to get the most use out of my paper. And if I can get 4 full-size pages out of each pattern paper sheet, then that is a good use of the materials. So what I'm going to do is fold it over, and I know there are so many different variations on the paper bag album, and this is just one that I happen to like because not only is it easier, but you can get an instant pocket. You don't have to do any additional work. It's just already built in. So after I've cut my 1/4 of an inch off, I'm folding this over and I'm tucking it in all the way to this point. Now this could be just a refresher for some of you that have made these as well in the past, and so I made my first one without cutting it and found it to be too big, so I went ahead and just snipped off that 1/4 inch. So basically now what we have is 6 inches tall and a little bit more than 5 1/8 inch wide. So you're going to have to accept that all of these paper bags, even in the same bag, are going to have some small amount of variation, and you're not going to get it perfect for each page. And I think that is liberating, because when you stop trying to measure everything exactly and plan everything perfectly, you can really just have a good time and play with your paper. So this is pretty much this size. There could be a difference between each page, even if you do the exact same technique, and I'm just going to embrace the imperfections and enjoy the process. For today's book, I'm going to need 4 of these bags, and that's going to be the front and back cover as a solid piece, and then I'm going to get my pocket pages on the inside. Another thing I did to help myself out is create an additional sample, and then I measured in the holes. So it's 1 inch in from the top and bottom, and then it's 3 inches in the middle, so that I can work my rings in. And it doesn't matter that these are perfectly spaced. It does matter that you cut them the same for each page, so that way your rings will work properly. So this is just my sample one, and I'm going to use this as a template when I get punching the holes for the pages, which is not going to happen until we start covering it, but go ahead and make this up in advance and you'll have it ready when you need it. I'm going to show you just 2 of the pages because I use the same design for each of the sets of pages inside. So I went ahead and prepared those in advance, but I'll show you how I assembled these. So what I'm going to do is cover the inside of the back of the pocket with this pattern paper, and this comes from the B side of that cut apart sheet with the sentiments. So I really utilized that additional paper pattern variety quite a bit because there is a fair amount of surface space to cover in a mini, even if you have one with pockets like this. And I only had to bring that paper down just inside the flap, but you still have a ways to go to get all that covered. And since we only have 4 sheets, I just want to make sure that I can get a lot of pattern variety. So I did use the B side. I picked my favorite sentiments off of there and then worked with what was left over. So like I just showed you, I did only cover where it would be hidden with the flap, and that is a good way to stretch it as well. Another way to stretch it is to bring in that Spectrum cardstock. This is Crocodile Smiles, and it coordinates very well. And that way I was able to keep some of the 4-sheet cardstock for additional matting and layering. And I'm covering the bottom of the pocket here. This is a dot and this is a dot, but you see how the scale changes. It definitely does not look too busy. So what you want to do is keep your offcuts as you're working along. These happen to be great little strips to accent these pockets. So I'm just using that coordinating pattern to run a strip down the middle, and then I'll top it with the sentiments that I did pick out to use as images. And this one is just a sweet little ticket, and there is my green matting around. This will definitely look like a separate layer on top of that red dot. So here is my pocket page, and what I have to do is close in the pocket on the sides so that whatever we put in doesn't fall out. So basically I am using the wet adhesive on the sides because I need it to have a really good contact. This needs to be a strong pocket so we can include all of the tags and mementos and all those fun things. So you need that pocket to be very sturdy. So what I'm going to do is bring in this. I'm just using this tacky glue for now, but you can use whatever kind that you like best. I'm getting it pretty close to the edge there, and I'm just getting a nice little bead of that down the edge of the pocket. Then I will fold it back up and I'll keep it in place. This is a good way to keep that pressure on that glue while it sets up by using these metal clips. These are just ones that I use for creating in my traveler's notebook, and so this will hold that paper to paper contact very tight while the glue sets up. And so we can move on to the next page while we're waiting for that. I've added the pattern paper to the cardstock. I'm using that same Crocodile Smile throughout, and then I'm going to use the larger images. So this was one nice thing about this album is I don't usually get to use a lot of the larger images, and because my tip-ins are usually smaller, but I'm using the whole image this time so I can have a lot of extra real estate in that book. There's going to be plenty of room for pictures and journaling. I'm going to add that, you see, with a tip-in flap created with that coordinating green cardstock, and I'll just tuck it around the back there and attach that. Okay, so when you open this tip-in, the portion that is attached to the back of the image is going to be a great tuck spot. So make sure not to add adhesive all the way to the edge, but now you can see that you can tuck a little tag or a picture in there, and that is an additional way to add some of the elements when you finish off the book. And then also remember, it is very important that all of your tip-ins come from the right hand side because your rings will be on the left, and this is the only way to get a functioning working tip-in is putting it on the right. So this is going to be the right hand side of this page, and it's just going to go on the next bag. So we'll just go ahead and attach that. And remember, I said there was some variation amongst even the same package of bags, so you may not get the exact borders every time, and that is just the beauty of this is that you don't have to work toward perfection. So now we have a tip-in that has a little tuck spot, and that is going to be the right hand side. So I did that for each set of inside pages, and now my glue is set up so you can see I'm going to have a nice strong pocket there. So let's flip that over. Oh, before I do that, let's put the tag in and show you how that will look finished. So I've got my next set of pages, and I pulled another one of those images from the cut apart sheet, and then here is its companion page. Still has that tip in with the tuck spot. This one had a little bit of grid on the back as well, so that would be a great place to add journaling. The next set is pretty much the same design, but this one has another one of those extra large vintage images that I don't usually get to use, and I was pretty happy with that. And then I took the sentiment portion here and left it as a single tag so I can tuck that into my pocket, so I can use this to include extra pictures or mementos to my pages. So this is going to be the back page, and I did wind up pairing a couple of different patterns to get this covered, and that's okay. I think it looks really cute. And so let's go ahead and put the base on the front cover and punch all our holes, and then we'll decorate the front cover with more dimensional embellishments. For the cover, I am using one of the offcuts just as a layering element so that I can have a little bit extra detail on the front cover, and then I'm going to attach it to the front of the book and we can start punching the holes. You do want to make sure to go through all of your pages before you start punching to make sure they're in the correct order and right side up, because that would be unfortunate to find an upside down pocket or punch through an image as you're going along. So make sure that you just do that first, and also remove your tags because you don't want to accidentally punch through those. Okay, so on my template I did mark front, and that means that I want this to be the front of the page as I'm punching along. You will need a crocodile to get through this because it's pretty bulky, but just line that up as best you can, see where that hole is going to fall, and punch through there. I do know that when I get to the center hole, I could be cutting through the top of the pocket, and that is okay because it's all glued together very well and nothing will fall apart. So there is the center hole, and then catch that last one, and then you want to do the same for all of your pages. I'm going to do that off camera because otherwise it's just a lot of noise of me punching holes. So I'll cut back in when I'm done. Okay, before I put these on the rings, I'm just going to go ahead and add the focal image. So this is one of the beautiful cut aparts, and I just used the collection paper to mat that so that it would match, and I put that up on a little bit of foam so that I could build some dimension. So now we can put these on the rings, and I'm just gonna mention as I do this first that these are just regular old standard binder rings, and the amount of pages that you put on is pretty much determined by how large your rings are. So if you have a lot of pages you want to put on, you definitely need to pick up some larger rings. And then also I should say that you do not need the 4 sheets for this book. I think if you wanted to create this with the new Magical Christmas collection from Authentique Paper, it would be absolutely stunning. And then you can utilize the ephemera sheet. They have like a sticker sheet or die cut sheet with every month, and so that's a good place to go to get the smaller images that you can use to enhance your pockets. And so use whatever collection that you have, and it might even be a little bit easier because I had to do a little bit of planning ahead to make sure I had enough pieces of the pattern paper to cover all the surfaces. So another thing I'm going to say before I continue on is that there's already a fair amount of bulk here, and I would not really consider adding any kind of foam spacers to the inside because you don't want your book to get misshapen. You want it to stay nice and square. So here is when you can come in and add some fun to these rings, and I'm just going to use a couple of different trims here. These are from Really Reasonable Ribbon, and I'm going to put 2 plaids on because I like plaid, and I think this changing the scale helps to keep it from looking too busy. It's okay to have a little bit of busyness on the edge here, and so I'm gonna do maybe like 2 or 3 on each one and alternate them so that they look like they're mixed up thoroughly. And so once you've got that tied on, you do want to come back and cut that at an angle so that your trim doesn't fray. I'm going to go ahead and do this part off camera as well because it's just a lot of me tying little knots, and so I'll cut back in when I get that done. So now I've got my ribbon all on my rings, and I'll tell you while you're doing this that you want to fight the instinct to add a whole lot of ribbon because your book will not open well if there's too much bulk in these rings. So I did stop myself at 3, and I went back and I gave them a little haircut to make sure they're all sort of the same size. That way nothing is sticking out. I'm going to put a couple of flower arrangements on here now that I know where those holes are going because I don't want to have anything in the way of that page sliding over. And I just created 2 arrangements here with my poinsettia die. I put the beautiful glitter paper flower in the center and then added some red flowers, some twine bows, and some greenery. And then I also added a glitter star just to give it a little bit of extra interest. So while I add that, I'm going to say that this would be such a great way to get through stash paper, especially if you have extra journal card and extra ephemera pieces. This would be a great use for that. And also I think this would be a great activity to enjoy with your kids because there is no fussy cutting and measuring and nothing has to be exactly perfect. So this would be something that you could include them with. And then also I'm going to add this little set of metal charms because I like to have something a little bit shiny, and I want to hide that underneath that second flower arrangement, so I'll just put that in now. There are also some different colored bags. I think if you go to the party section of your dollar store or a party supply store, so if you wanted to coordinate, let's say Halloween paper, you might get some black bags or red for Valentine's. This depends on what collection you're working with. And so you might check your dollar store or party supply and change that out. But I like the craft paper for this, and I think it's a good neutral. So if you have those, I got the bag that I have. I don't actually remember when I bought it. We've had it for so long. There was 100 of them in the bag. So if you're using 3 or 4 or 5 pages, you can get a lot of books out of just one package. So that's a good value, and it's a good way to get through your stash. So before we're done, let's go ahead and put our tags back in. And I think this one is the one I had first, and you can see there's plenty of room in those pockets for additional pictures or mementos or keepsakes, and then you're still going to have your tip in with the tuck spot as well. So for this page I did wind up with an extra journal card, so since it sort of matched the size, I just tucked that in there, and the last page is going to get this one and then we're all set. So that's all for our paper bag mini album created for the 4-sheet challenge using the December pages of the calendar collection from Authentique Paper. I'll drop some links in the description so you can check that out, as well as links for our social media sites. If you enjoyed this project, make sure you give me a big old thumbs up, leave me a comment, and if you're not already, I would love for you to subscribe. Don't forget to hit that bell notification so you'll be alerted every time we add new content. And as always, I'm wishing you a happy and productive day, and I thank you so much for watching. Bye!